So let me start this segment by asking you guys a question. Which political party, pop quiz everybody, was trying to get content and music banned in the 90s? Which political faction?
The Republicans.
It was the Republicans.
Yep. I was born in '96, so I don't remember.
Oh yeah, it doesn't.
In the late 90s. I remember. So
I remember.
Magic the Gathering, for instance, we actually have this card downstairs called Unholy Strength. Magic the Gathering, of course, is a strategic card game with fantasy themes, and there's an image of a guy with a pentagram behind him. And it was conservative religious families who complained and forced the company to remove the image of the pentagram because it was satanic. Check out this story. Illinois lawmaker seeks ban of Grand Theft Auto game following rise in carjackings. And which political party does this Illinois lawmaker who is trying to ban a video game belong to? What would you guess?
Well, the party affiliation is not in the title, so
I know.
so the rule is Democrat.
Rule, yes.
That's the rule.
You're correct.
I think he's
You
a
win.
statist. Is he a statist?
Yes.
I'll take that.
Sure.
I got it.
Statist. He's a Democrat. A Democrat is trying to get a video game banned. This is it. I'm sorry, everybody. Listen, first of all, when was the last Grand Theft Auto game made? 2013?
No, more recent than that.
No?
GTA 5, 2016?
Yeah.
No, I think
Someone
you're
look
wrong.
it up.
Sure. Yeah, we gotta look it up.
But I remember seeing so many Republicans when one of the Grand Theft Autos had a scene with a working woman.
2013.
Is it really?
Yeah.
They ported it to PC later.
Yeah. Yeah, but I remember the outcry.
Wait. GTA 5 came out for PS3? Is that really the latest Grand Theft Auto?
Wow.
It's
I
been
think
it's
so.
been it's been a hot minute.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a hot minute.
So listen. You got a guy, a Democrat, trying to ban a video game that's going on like 8 years old because carjackings went up? I blame you, Ian.
I see the link.
Because you're the one who said
It doesn't make people want to carjack cars. It just makes it easier to do. That's what the
I think he
the
watched
evidence
the
points
video
to.
with Ian describing what he said and came to that
Yeah,
conclusion.
But
see?
the one super chatter said like video game violence. I was like, do video games make people commit more violence? It was like, no, it doesn't make people want to do it. It just makes it easier to pull the trigger. They do it. That's why they train soldiers.
Exactly. Yeah, we talked to somebody about that. They say the military will
forget
use
who.
these
the guy from the ranch.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah. It doesn't make people more likely to. It makes it easier for those too. So that I understand.
Family Guy did a whole cutaway about that.
About video games?
Well, specifically Grand Theft Auto, where Peter loses his memory and she's like, "Oh, just here, play this game so you can remember how to drive," and then you see him carjacking. So it's silly money.
So this Illinois guy, Rep. Marcus Evans Jr., has introduced a bill that would amend a pre-existing law banning certain video games from being sold to minors. His amendment would ban the sale of games with subject matter including motor vehicle theft with a driver or passenger present. The amendment has yet to be voted on. There have been renewed debates around the ban after carjackings among young people have gone up recently. The bill would prohibit the sale of some of these games that promote the activities that we're suffering from in our communities. A 16-year-old was arrested in charge of carjacking on Monday. Days ago, there were two 15-year-olds arrested. I got to just say, I really don't think these kids are playing GTA and being like, dude, I got an idea. Let's go carjack for real. Yeah, that's so smart. And they high five and they just go outside and they're like, yo, give me your car. And that's
I don't know. We live in a generation of Tide Pods.
That's true.
Nobody was eating Tide Pods.
I
That
know.
was not
I-
real.
Yeah.
But when it comes to intelligence, by and large, and it comes to our education system, we are failing. That's the bigger point I'm making here. And I
For
think
sure.
that's true. But also, most importantly, especially with this Grand Theft Auto thing, I believe it was Republicans that made it so you needed to show an ID card to show that you're old enough to buy certain video games just a few years ago. I remember there was such a massive outcry against GTA. There was one particular scene with a working woman that everyone was screaming about, and they actually came pretty close in banning the video game a couple years ago. So it's just absolutely absurd to still see this nonsensical argument being made right now. But it's the perfect representation of what government is. Absurd and stupid.
I don't know about that Republican ID thing. I just tried to Google it. I couldn't find it. But I do have the story where The Verge writes, Trump and Republicans continue to blame video games for their failures on gun control. They say there's no evidence, but it's a talking point that has been repeated since Columbine.
Amazing.
Following two, we'll call them mass tragic events, they say lawmakers and government officials offers thought and prayers to take no action. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy told Fox and Friends that video games dehumanize individuals. In a speech today, President Trump pointed at video games specifically as the root cause of these events. We must stop the glorification of violence in our society, he said. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It sounds like, Ian, when you said before, that video games were leading to this, you were far right.
I would like to ask Julio about this because you're actually in the military. You're
Yeah.
in the reserves. What branch of the military are you in?
Marine Corps.
And what do you think about violence in video games and how it associates?
I mean, there's. I don't think that's true in the sense that that's the cause for it. I mean, you have to look at just the whole environment and obviously who the person is. I mean, I think in terms of desensitizing, maybe.
Yeah.
But in terms of it being the trigger behind it, no, I don't.
Or like encouraging it.
Encouraging it, yeah, because you separate the two. I mean,
it is an interesting point that Trump and Republicans were then bringing up, dehumanizing, essentially. Like we learned from it was the fellow from Fortitude. Is that who were you saying?
Yeah,
Lou?
Fortitude Ranch.
Yeah.
He was saying the military. So I brought this up because there's this movie called The Men Who Stare at Goats.
yeah,
And it was this like project where they tried doing psychic spies. It's a real thing apparently.
Yeah.
And in the movie you've got what's the guy's name? Is it Jeff Bridges, the actor? Is that his name? I don't
Sounds
know.
right.
which one?
But
Well,
the actor in the movie Men Who Stare at Goats. They were talking about how he was in Vietnam, and this like Vietnamese woman runs out into a field, and all of the American soldiers, they don't shoot, and then he's like, "What are you doing? Start shooting!" And they shoot up to purposefully miss. And so the dude who was here said the way they combat that is using active targets. Like they used to just do like a target. Now they do a shape like a person, and they do first-person video games, so that now it's in the people's minds of what a person looks like. So the general idea is that video games don't make people more violent, but a violent person would help them essentially if they were going to commit an act. They would not be averse to shooting a person, right?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just have a hard time. I just have a hard time believing that's the main factor that's going
Right.
to drive somebody. I mean, and you look at you just look at the history. I mean, you don't want to talk about. Be careful when talking about mental illness, but Adam Lanza from the Newtown.
Right.
I mean, there's just so many other things. Although I think he did.
Right.
I think he did play video games, though. I think.
Well, I think everybody plays video games.
Yeah.
Well, right.
They used to
And
claim
so-
Dungeons and Dragons was going to make kids go crazy.
and
It's violence.
I mean, I will say, I mean, because like from the riots that I covered a lot. I mean, it was just back to back to back, and I found myself being very bored and so I think there's an adrenaline aspect for certain high stress events, not necessarily school shootings, but I can see that because there was some stuff that would happen that I would see and report on, and it would be sad and be tragic, but I'd have a hard time finding emotion behind it just because I had seen it over and over and over
So
personally.
that would be the desensitization.
That'd be kind of the desensitization aspect, and so like I would recognize that it would like okay, like this is bad and this is sad, but it didn't have the same effect the very first.
Yeah, they do this to
Yeah.
many police departments. They play very violent riot footage and officers getting hurt right before they go out. I've seen the many reports of this before they go out cover many protests. Or a lot of them are jacked up. A lot of them are ready to prepare to defend themselves. And most protests usually don't get violent. They're becoming more and more violent. But again, psychologically, the video is such an important component in making people realize that there's something else bigger out there. It plays on the imagination, but it also plays on your visceral senses, where you get to see it and you get inundated in it in such a way where you believe you're actually in it. So video is one of the biggest forms of propaganda that we should be, of course, made aware of, and especially question when certain traumatic videos are being played over and over and over again, especially on mainstream media.
Dude, you were watching a movie yesterday or something, and it was like a guy just hitting another guy, just beating on his face.
Oh, Taken.
Taken.
Taken 3.
Yet another violent movie. I mean, we're talking about
Super
so much violence in the movie industry. It is
Oh, well.
punching, even all the Marvel movies, just punching and beating and throwing and
But
blasting.
listen. Everything, like 90, I'm just giving an exaggerated number, but the overwhelming majority of content is violence.
Guns.
Every
guns.
Marvel movie. Every Marvel, these are some of the biggest movies ever made. Literally all of them violence.
The Mandalorian.
Mandalorian, that was all violence.
It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Baby
Game of
Yoda.
Thrones, violence, war, video games, violence, conflict. The biggest games, like even Minecraft has violence in it to a certain degree.
Yeah, sure.
It's not the worst. I shouldn't rag on Minecraft, but you look at some of the biggest games. Fortnite, violence. I don't know if people are still playing Fortnite. Grand Theft Auto, the game where you drive around, run people over, and do crazy things. There is this component of video games that conflict is one of the big components of our entertainment. I wonder why that is. I'd love to talk to a